Okay, so the first thing you need to know here is what's the point of carb counting, right? We're using this math. I'm just thinking in a really broad terms. We're using this math as the best metric to select insulin dosage. And what I would say is because of the complexities of absorption and metabolism of factors that increase or decrease insulin sensitivity, such as your level of exercise and so on, there's no factual way. Being a little bit philosophical here, there's no factual way to carb count to dose your insulin correctly. Thus, if, for example, just to prove my point here, if carb counting could be used effectively, then you should be able to eat 100 grams of carbs, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 200 grams of carbs, and as long as your math was good, it would work out. So when I raise that issue, it should become a little bit more obvious that of course, there's no way to carb count to do this math. So enter the what's the model for how we deal with this? One is to just deal with it. You're going to have highs. ADA says as long as you stay under 180 postprandial that you're fine. And yikes, yeah, just yikes. Even so, the DCCM study is one of the big ones showing a direct correlation between A1C and complications. And it kind of like they don't show you the data for below 6. But with 6, the higher you are from 6, the higher your level of complications are. And it goes up sort of exponentially. But also there is the more recent, the American Diabetes Association journal, DiaCares. There's an article showing that actually the likelihood of complications increases even if your average glucose is like 110. As soon as you're above normal range, I can't say as soon as, and who knows what normal range is anymore with, the status of pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes in the American population. So, you could say that if you're letting your blood sugar go over, let's say like 110, it's associated with complications. And when we say complications, like that's endgame stuff. These are things that, I'm a holistic, naturopathic kind of guy. We can measure damage from early in subtle ways. And it shouldn't just be a matter, like one of the axioms said in holistic health is that you need to get out of here. Hang on. So it's described that the kidneys are like a filter, kind of like a Brita filter, and you gradually lose your filtration capacity over time. And so it's always a burden to protect the kidneys because once you lose kidney filtration capacity, there's no coming back, more or less. You end up on dialysis. Once you go on dialysis, it's not like, oh, you can take this drug and your kidneys will be fine again. It's like, nope, you can need transplant. So what's said in the holistic world is you can lose something like 80 to 90, I think it's around 80% of your kidney filtration capacity before the kidney problem even shows up on a lab test. Now, I'm not sure if that's true because 80%, that seems very non-scientific to me. It seems like bullshit, but we get the point. You get the point. And so a lot of these subtle things, when I'm having really clean blood sugar, and I think when I was first diagnosed, I was because of my bad story, aside from getting my master's degree in nutrition and all that, I got into Bernstein, and I was eating very low carb. And 120s were, I wouldn't go much higher than 120s. My 3 months after diagnosis with like a 13.8 A1C, my A1C was 5.2. During that time, if my blood sugar, I think it only happened, I think of once. I can literally just remember once that my blood sugar went past 200. It went to 212. And I felt stoned out, and I was like, man, that really, you can really feel that. And, so all that damage there should I feel be taken pretty serious. I'm taking steps every day to protect my kidneys and all of these kinds of things, because I know, even if I have a good day for me where I'm like, I'm moving my targets from like safe range is about 80 to like basically I'll be in the range of 80 to 120, 130, something like that right now, and I'm going even tighter, right? And sort of that's where I am. So even in my relatively, pretty low range, I want to take the extra steps to manage, any potential damage from the exposure to sugar in my blood. So I'll leave that there. So let's say your program isn't the ADA. I want to go up to 180, or some people even looser. You hear really sad stories. There was someone who reached out to me online. They were told by their endo, this is in the UK, never to leave their blood sugar below 180 because they were going low at night. And somehow their treatment, I want to say, was so abhorrent, and I don't know, I'm not their doctor, that they interpreted that to mean that they should never go below 180 at all. And this does not speak to what the research says about type 1, about what we should be doing. Then you have, Bernstein, who back since like the 70s, he was one of the first people in America to have a blood sugar testing device in his house, back when the device was mainly used in emergency rooms to see if, somebody was drunk or if they were passed out because they were diabetic. So he got one of these from the supply companies, used it in his house, and he was one of the first guys to learn. It's like, wow, when I eat a sandwich, this is what happens to my blood sugar. And then non-diabetics, this is what's happening to their blood sugar. So he made a goal of normalizing his blood sugar, which is basically you eat a really, it's a low carb, high protein diet with specific like 6 grams of carbohydrates at breakfast, 12 at lunch and dinner. And many of the patients doing this, there was a review done by it was a school in Boston, it might have been Harvard, where they reviewed some of these people in the type 1 grit community and just found like impossibly good control, amazingly good control. Their A1Cs were like 4.5, 4.9, 4.7. They weren't having highs, they weren't having lows, and it's like, well, that's a pretty good standard of care. Like that's badass. So that's one school of thought about what we could do, and that's the law of small numbers. Because carb counting fails, and this is the word from Bernstein, because carb counting fails, if you choose to use smaller amounts of carbs, there's less math to mess up. So law of small numbers, meaning if you're taking 1.5 units for 12 grams of carbs at lunch, if you're off by 10%, your blood sugar might go up an extra 8 points. But if you're off 15% or whatever, and you're taking a huge dose of insulin for a massive dose of carbs, you might be high by 140 points. You might be substantially high. So that's one of the ways we deal with this. It's tough to really impregnate ourselves with this kind of knowledge that stabilizing our blood sugar even into normal range is really best. But I'm a scientist, and for me that tests out pretty well. The damage point in my testing is basically on the speed of going up is the one that matters. So if you go from 90 to 130, even that is a problem. 90 to 110 is very safe. So I do implore you to investigate that as kind of the backbone, and suggest the speed of going up as the metric that you look for. So when you're low, say you're 60, this isn't so much a problem if you go 60 to 90, but if you go 60 to 150, then that's when we start already seeing stress in the brain, stress in the eyes, stress in some of the areas we associate with type 1 diabetes. So the other thing that I encourage is lowering your targets. When I first did my muscle testing experiments, my blood sugar was very happy around 68, 73. Maybe it's the case that previous to that time my blood sugar had been higher, and maybe it's like we're going through a reset time, and my body, by the muscle testing, wanted to be really low for some reason, just because it was so stressed out by that damage. Just like if all you ate was apples every day for 3 years, you probably wouldn't want another apple. It would take you a while to be able to eat apples again. So having my blood sugar, at this range every day, my body was having just enough stress to say, I really don't want that right now. So maybe that was the reason it was so low. But you have to test what works for you. And this we do by assigning basals on fasting days. So to get your basal right on fasting days, using muscle testing, just a sample idea, would be to plan on fasting until noon, 1, 3, or 4 every day, and then testing precisely how much sugar your body wants and how much insulin you want. So when you wake up, dawn phenomenon, you probably want to take some insulin, and then you find, let's say you're at 180 and you're going down. And normally people who are a little bit uncontrolled or whatever they fear numbers, like you go to 80 and it's like, I don't know, what would the memes say about it? I think the memes are something like me having an 83 blood sugar, 84 blood sugar, and I'm just enjoying my 85 blood sugar, and I'm enjoying my time on the computer, and having fun and smiling. And then it goes to 75, and it's like you feel like the world's going to explode or something like that. So, at 80, does your body need sugar to correct that? And the reason I say 3 days is when you insert fasting periods, it takes a little bit for the body to adjust. So I'm not advising you to do I'm not advising you to do a water fast and full-on fast. Like, once you start eating, eat for the rest of the day. Just in the morning period for at least, I'd say it would be ideal 6 hours, 8 hours, at least 6 or 8 hours. Do the morning experiment and see what blood sugar does your body like to be at. And then when you go to eat, you have to really test what kind of meal your body wants to eat. and see if you're in the low carb category, in the high carb category. Even for the people who are very low carb, it's been an interesting science kind of thing for me that once every 3 to 6 weeks or so, the body is like craving for a sugar day. So I'm not necessarily advising a keto type approach with that intention. Of saying we have to be keto and keep the body in keto. It seems like, every once in a while, the body just wants some bread or some carbohydrate. Usually brown rice works best. So if you are on a keto thing, get up one morning every few weeks, do your morning thing, take a little bit extra insulin before lunch, and go wild, and so that's another side point. So in this discussion on why we shoot for low targets, what I'm getting into is that's what the body actually wants, and we can't assess this using the numbers. We can't assess this using the math. The only science we have is seeing what the normal body likes to be at. Dr. Bernstein, he says it's about 83, his experience testing non-diabetic patients who actually aren't pre-diabetic. The current definition of diabetes, like you can be going up to type 2 diabetes, you can be going up to 160 or 180 and at every meal, and that's supposed to be fine, and that's not fine. It's not fine. The non-diabetic shouldn't really be going up much higher than 120, 130, 140. If they're binge eating carbohydrates, would be more close to normal for their very high numbers, like occasionally high numbers. So that's some stuff to play with. I'm just throwing that out there, that this system, if we're being completely neutral and we're using it like a researcher, and we're saying, my body wants this amount of insulin, I'm going to take this amount of insulin, my body wants to eat this food, not that food. We actually just do it without judgment. Like one of the old, and this I'm sure I'll get into later when we talk about how to not mess up your muscle testing. In muscle testing teachings, it's kind of like, I like to poo-poo most fields of muscle testings. You go on YouTube and you see a lot of psychic tests, like straight up psychic tests. Do I want sugar? Do I want... And, if you do that really well, and if you think of the sugar, thinking of the sugar might cause a stress response or a positive response, but this system, we expose the variables we want to test to the body in a physical way. So the psychic tests are like, should I go to the park today, and stuff like that. And, there's a lot of stuff like that. You'll see people, you hold the heart, do I sway forward, do I sway back, and I'll use that with basically someone who is new to the muscle testing idea. They want to go to the grocery store, and they're clueless about muscle testing. They don't have time to learn it, but I would not use that to dose my insulin. So what we learn is that the mind and other factors can impact the accuracy of your muscle tests. So, for example, the phenomenon of switching. If I have sort of a major stress going on somewhere in my internal biology, and then I try to go do muscle testing, I might get wrong answers. I might get opposite answers. And it's because I have like a major stress going on and my body's not capable of getting an accurate test. But the reason I mention this is just the age-old, supplement seller, muscle tester. They're like, let's say they just read a seminar on the benefit of benfotiamine. You go see them, you say you have type 1 diabetes, and type 1 benfotiamine is used in type 1 diabetes, and they go test you. They say, there's a problem here, let's go test the benfotiamine. And because they believe that's the answer, they're already influencing the test. If they really believe everybody should be taking vitamin C is going to test for you. And so it's really hard to be uninfluenceable. It's really hard to be neutral as you go about muscle testing. So, that's why I mentioned this in the theme of we want to be really scientific here, and we're actually testing what's good for the body. When you do that, where does my body actually want to be? Where should I set my target basal dose to keep me? The basal dose, absent of food, should keep you stable. Absent of food should keep you stable. That's right. When you're not eating food, should keep you stable. The bolus should be used for the food. So if you're, fasting for the first 6 or 8 hours of the day, and your body wants to be right around 79, when you get to 76, it's just like, a third of a gram of sugar or something. Your body wants just a little bit of sugar. And then okay, well, I'm gonna make sure my basal keeps me at 79. I'm gonna work with my doctor to adjust my basal dose so that when I'm not eating, I'm perfectly stable at 79. Another little research point of this test is it can't be used for a new patient as accurately as someone who has been diabetic past their honeymoon phase. Someone who is a new diabetic, I wouldn't use this test on as a primary thing, because there's like confluence of there's all these factors that are still present in the body, given that they're still generating some insulin, that the body might. So I'm assuming no insulin. My body definitely wants the insulin. Now, even if there's a problem and it's toxic and there's junk in it, my body did they lose their child or a dog? I'm trying to hear my neighbors. Okay. So even if there's some things in this that might still be bad for me, my body's like, fuck yeah, give me this insulin. Excuse my language. Sorry about that. But if you're brand new to diabetes, the body is still going to go through an adjustment period of saying, I don't want any insulin, or I want lots of insulin. So if you're going to say your child or someone, I know this might not be, well, I would really say it would be best to work with a practitioner. You could work with me, work at a distance, but work over the phone, or you send in a saliva swab for my testing. And then we could find the body wants the insulin, but it also wants this vitamin, this nutrient, this antiviral therapy, this thing to, flush out the bile ducts where insulin is released of any plaquing, biofilm stuff. It really wants this thing addressed to the bowel flora and all the other things relevant to the etiology of the type 1 diabetes. And then, because insulin will cause switching, for those who want to learn what switching is, in the muscle testing context, it basically messes up your energy field. It causes some blockage. Muscle testing switches. So there's no insulin that's not genetically modified and a mess. So muscle testing causes switching. So we address those switching tests first. So if you want me to run a panel for you to help address those wider factors, and then you might be able to then you can more safely test. So that's another research point. I can do that testing for you, but I'm basically just saying err on the side of for a honeymooner, that in the first year or so maybe work on expanding your program for what you're doing. There's a Facebook group for I think it's preventing autoimmune illness or something like that for just different research, and it's fairly holistic naturopathy, different research on protocols for newly diagnosed type 1 diabetics. For those who don't know what a honeymooner is, you're watching the wrong video. I'm not gonna bore you with the basics of that. What else? So if you're doing the muscle test, one of the things that we're going to do is, your feet are flat on the floor, good posture, and I'm going to use dominant hand. I'm right-handed. This is my right hand. And this is my non-dominant hand. I'm going to use my non-dominant hand, and I'm going to make a circle where I'm touching my fingers tip to tip, and then I'm going to hold that parallel to the floor. My arm is not going to be compressed to my side. It's going to be out. And it's going to be parallel. Like if I put a cup of water in it, no water would be spilling, parallel to the floor. With this muscle test, this arm is going to go out too. We're testing not up here, and we're not testing down here. We're testing right around here, heart kind of thing. And this is a test that I'm just going to demonstrate for you. So what I'm going to do is try to squeeze that ring apart. I'm going to squeeze this ring apart. And if something makes me go weak, let's see if taking insulin makes me go weak. For this one, I'm just going to put it in my hand. So that insulin makes me go weak. Let's go to 1 unit. And also when I do this, I'm focusing on the item, and it's always good to pause. So focusing on the insulin, and this makes me go weak. So, all right, let's line up to do this testing. So we've got our parallel to the floor hand, and one of the things that we're going to decide in this first video is which finger do we use to test when. Like when I want to test to see if something makes me go weak, if it's bad for me, I would use my ring finger, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Naturally, my ring finger is strong. My middle finger and index finger are strong, but my pinky finger is weak. So if I want to see if insulin makes me go weak, I can't use my weak finger. I have to use my last strong finger. Focus on the insulin, and it makes me go weak. The right hand is also going to be a circle. Doesn't have to be quite as round because we're going to stick our fingers into this ring. So I've got my ring here, and I'm going to stick it in like this. When I'm here, I'm not in the middle. I snug it all the way up forward. I snug it all the way up forward, just like that. So I'm just breaking it apart. So the first exercise you're going to do, feet on the floor, good posture, arms out. We're going to see which finger breaks. This is without any other variables going on, which finger breaks. Now, let's say you just took some life-saving herbal tea you're drinking. Let's say you have a computer in front of you or your smartphone in your hand, and it's causing a stress state. Before we want to test, we just want to reset our body. We just want to be in a neutral place. So to get neutral, there's a lot of ways to do this, but what I'm going to suggest is there's 2 points you can tap, which are basically here. So we're going to tap just like this. And we're going to tap, maybe 10 or 12 times. And that's going to help you avoid false readings. If this tapping seems weird, or you feel like you can't do it, you're in the wrong video. Because, this school of muscle testing is very much built around acupuncture. You can hold an organ that has a stress on it, tap an acupuncture point, and we might even make you hum while you say it. So if that seems weird, okay, we're going to do that first. If you're into tapping, you can do more tapping points to reset. The full sequence of all the tapping points is on the top of the head in a vertical line using all 10 fingers. The thumb is on the side. You don't need to know this, but some of you like tapping. So we tap there. And we can go to the back of the head, karate chop point on the supranuclear arch. There's a bump on the back of the head. There's 2 bumps on each side, and it's right above those points. It's the bladder 10 points. We tap there. And then over the eye, the pinky is on the inner edge of the eyebrow, and it's on the bottom of the forehead. So it's not high up here on the forehead, it's way on the bottom. The next one is the pinky is in the corner of the eye, and the other 5 fingers are on top of the zygoma, the bone, below the temple. The next one is a straight line down from the eyes with the thumb just a little bit to the outside. And then the pinky directly in the middle. This is our over the mouth, and then below the mouth and the chin, and then kidney point, which is so there's a little divot on below the clavicle towards the center. There's this little divot spot that's K27, and a straight line down from the divot, and the spleen, which is hands as a flat bar on the so if you want to, before you do any muscle testing, you want to reset, we do these. You do each one for about 10 or 12 taps. So I'm abbreviating it. And so that's all your tapping points. But just for the sake of today's video, we've got this neat point here where we're tapping kind of on the upper inside part of our cheek with all 5 fingers. Okay, so when I do that, that makes sure that when I go to calibrate, I'm not going to get any weird readings, like getting false positive or false negative readings. Let's say there's an area of the body that has a problem. This just temporarily alleviates that problem and gets the chi in your body circulating again, so your body can produce good, consistent results. So you'll need that. You will need that later. When I say then do the reset points, you've got to reset. It might not come up so much just for insulin, but if you're learning muscle testing, it's a good practice to know about. Okay, so now we're going to test to find what's our strong finger and what's our weak finger. The force of strength we're using is kind of like a firm handshake. It's just like a gentle but firm kind of squeeze. I'm not, there's no reason for that. And as you get better at this, you'll be able to become more gentle. If anything is stressful around you, you'll have to go reset and go sit down somewhere kind of nice where you can relax. It's good to take a breath before we test, like get in that focus, kind of quiet and zen-like. It's not like I'm going to test this, I'm going to test this, don't rush it. If you're not getting consistent results, then you close the video and try again tomorrow. That's the norm. What I'm asking you to realize is that you're committing to 2 weeks of practice, mainly at grocery stores first. Is this food positive? Is this food negative? Or in your kitchen, is this food positive? Is this food negative? Or with the basic insulin sugar test. Do I want insulin right now? Do I want sugar right now? And then go look at your CGM graph or check with your glucometer and say, yeah, I was right. I wanted sugar. And then you can get into the more the specifics. What I don't want you to have is the idea that you can test all your insulin dosages tomorrow. I think that a few weeks of practice is about right for this system. If you're becoming a practitioner, then I would say 50 patients. 50 patients is about right to have a sense of, when you're getting clear, correct responses and unclear responses, and you know what to do and you know how to get around them, and there are other muscle tests than this system. So an interesting one, if you're laying down and you put your hands and your feet out, when you lay down, your hands will either be aligned at the same, distance or height from the body, or they'll be a little bit off. And so if you have a practitioner, they'll pull your arms out and then see if you're level or if you're off. And there's all these little signs of the nervous system is working right, or it's tapped out and it's in a stress mode. So in some ways, I want to say, do try to do this technique and let me know if you have any problems, and I can advise you in one of the more simpler options. But don't tell me that you're looking for advice and it's only been a day. Try to give it, as I said, just if you're having a hard time with it, close the video, think about it, try it again the next day. And if you've done it 3 times and you're still confused, if you're not able to get consistent results just for the calibration test, then maybe we need to walk back. And there are, it's probably like 3% of people, but there are people who have like neck or neurological kind of stuff going on, and they will not get accurate tests. There's also some exceptions. So, if you want help, plan on sending me a video of what you're doing, how you're doing it, and not like a close-up video where I just see your hands, like a proper video where you can, like how you see me, and this is what I'm doing, and, under 3 minutes, and I should be able to give you an idea. So, all right. We have to figure out which fingers stay strong and which go weak. That'll be the first test. We call this calibrating. We're just setting up, what do our strong and weak reactions feel like? And there's going to be 2 parts to this. One is seeing which is strong and which is weak. And the second is practicing sensing strong versus weak on an individual finger. And I'll show you how to do that because it's kind of cool. So, all right. You were going to forget to tap, weren't you? Just take that little moment to find the quiet corner of the brain. elbows out a little bit. Circle parallel to the floor, our pulling fingers brought up here. And I'm going to squeeze with a medium and moderate, and I'm not holding it, just, and it's not a, you don't want to do super fast. And what I'm sensing is not the strength of my finger. My strength doesn't matter. It's whether it slips open. So if I could just demonstrate that. So this is me pushing really hard, but I could still get it to kind of click open. I'll do it normal. So this one's strong, but if I go to my pinky finger, I'm going to show you that. It just kind of, there's still strength there, and if I squeeze harder, I can make it go back, but it doesn't lock. It releases. So I'm going to squeeze really hard with this finger. Even though I'm squeezing really hard, I can't get it to release. But with two fingers, I can get it to release. So don't overexert yourself. And it's not airy-fairy. Those muscle tests are usually really incorrect. It's not like, it's a firm, like handshake. You know, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do the first one. This stayed strong for me. I'm going to go to the second one. That stays strong. I'm going to verify by using two fingers. I'm going to add a second finger to my circle. So two fingers in the circle still stay strong. Ring finger, and I'm just going to model. I feel like it's kind of opening. No, it's not. If I use two fingers, then it opens. And you might get some middle ground like that. If you get some middle ground like that, you're practicing what strong and weak feels like, and you're realizing how amazingly subtle that distinction is. Go back to your top finger. If you get to here and you have a question, go back to your top finger. That's definitely strong. I know that that's strong. That's definitely strong. No, that's strong. And then I'm going to go to my fourth finger, and that opens. If you did your tapping, and today's a good day for you, whatever you find will be permanently what you use. Let's say you're unsure. Check your posture. Check how relaxed you are. Take 5 minutes. And then I'm going to have you come back to that. So the calibration, we go from top finger to bottom finger. We see which fingers are strong and which fingers are weak. It should be that if my third finger was strong, the ones previous to it, the stronger fingers, will also be strong, and this finger is weak. If the pinky finger is still strong, you may have to use two fingers, and that goes weak. And that will be your first weak finger. You have to use two on this, and that's weak. That will be sort of rare. So again, we're going through that again and again, practicing just consistency and just nice, even rhythm. Not trying to draw it out, and, you know, it's not a complicated math puzzle. You either get it or you don't. So it's like, you don't need to go into some great intellectual pursuit and wonder what it is. You'll get there. Okay, so keep that on the back burner. If you got that, that's great. We're going to go to our last strong finger, which for me is this one. We're interested in the strong versus weak because the last strong finger can be used to see if anything makes me go weak, if it's bad for me. Like my 15 units of insulin, I'm going to use that weak finger, and it's bad for me. Let's see if I take just a little bit of banana and go to my weak finger, the banana makes it strong. So that's what we're going to be doing, but hang on, we're not there yet. So what I want to do now is just show you a calibration practice test. We use the word calibrate. Before you go test any variables, you got to say sometimes, like, let me calibrate for a minute, let me just see. And we have one position you hold, and the reading will always be strong, and one position you hold, and the reading will always be weak. So when you say, let me calibrate for a minute, what it means is, let me practice, okay, this is strong, this is what weak feels like, let me feel the strong again, okay, cool, I got it. And we often need this when we're muscle testing with another person. Self-muscle testing, let me muscle test with a new person, let me just calibrate you, let me feel what the strong feels like, the weak feels like. In this case, for self-testing, it's equally as important. And oftentimes you have to go back and say, my weak finger is strong right now, and something feels wrong, and then you have to go back and tap and reset your system, and then you should be back to neutral again. Because we haven't added any variables, this is all neutral. Okay, so here's the calibration points. I'm going to be using my ring finger, my last strong finger, and I'm going to take the pad, I guess I'll do this without glasses. I'm going to take the pad of my finger here, just right between the eyes. Strong. Then I'm going to take the nail of my finger there, and it goes weak. Let me test that again. Strong, and I can push really hard, and it's just locked. And I go to the nail, and I can feel it just sort of, it clicks open, clicks open. So that clicking open for me, I've done this for thousands and thousands and thousands of times, it clicks open. But for you, when you go weak, it might be a very subtle difference, like too subtle to detect. A lot of times what I see is when someone goes to their weak reading, when they do the finger, it just separates just a little bit. And yes, that is your weak. It went weak. It's like, just like when we're testing a whole arm, strong versus weak, it's only 2 pounds of pressure difference between the strong and weak. Meaning I can put 18 pounds of weight and it goes weak, but 16 and it stays strong. It's 2 pounds of pressure difference. So all you should have for this video is the practice to learn which finger is to use. You've got your last strong finger, which we test to see if something makes us go weak, and we've got our first weak finger. So let's say my last strong finger was the middle finger. That is the finger I would use to see what makes me go weak, and then the next finger would be what I would use to see if something goes strong, the first weak finger. So I'll use the term like this: let's go to your last strong finger, or let's go to your first weak finger. For me, it's these 2 fingers, but for you, it might be other options. And just that pinky exception, for some people, the pinky with 1 finger on this hand will be their last strong, and 2 fingers will be their first weak. So we're not getting into counting or testing any outside variables. That is what you need to know to muscle test. If you want to experiment, like you're unsure, and it's like, is it this finger that's my last strong, or is it this one? Or let's say you're not getting any readings at all, keep doing this and this. And what you'll notice is, even on the finger that's not my last strong finger, my middle finger, I can use the nail here. That still goes weak. Let's see if it still goes weak on the top one. It still goes weak on the top one. So using this isn't going to help you decide what finger, but it's going to help you learn what they feel like. If I go to my first weak finger and I use the pad here, what's going to happen? It goes strong. But when I go to my nail, the last strong finger goes weak. So if you've got that, you'll be prepared for our next video.